friends, I want to introduce Mr. Preston Taylor. And this is a guy who, like I said, he's taught me so much about myself. He's going to be talking about worry to worthiness, getting unstuck, and sharing a bit of his personal story. Preston lives by the motto, if you want something you've never had, then you've got to do something you've never done. Probably a hard lesson that we've all had to learn from time to time. He is the program director for the Hail Mary Project. It's a sports-based youth development after-school program that combines athletics, dialogue, and mentoring all into one fun activity. I can only imagine that's really fun. And the ultimate goal for the Hail Mary Project is reducing recidivism by building resilience. Preston is an active community leader and member of the Christian Community Development Coalition, which is where I believe we initially met. He is a man of faith and a personal mentor to me and to many in the Cedar Valley area and probably around the world by now, since he's been going to all these national conferences. So Preston, thank you for being here, and take it away.
I appreciate that introduction, Annie. I couldn't toot my horn that much if I tried. Can y'all hear me okay? Thumbs up? I'm good. What's up, Fearless Leadership Summit? I know this is like a different format than what we used to. I most definitely got to get used to using Zoom, but I mean, it is what it is right now. So like Annie said, my name is Preston Taylor, and I am the director of the Hail Mary Project. And one of the reasons why, well, I guess it's not a reason, but I think I lucked up and came across the opportunity to be a part of the Hail Mary Project, because like everybody, you know, spoke about before, it was just something like that passion, that burning desire to want to give back, to want to do more, kind of led me speaking my dreams, and just that's I think that's what it was. As I started speaking my dreams and as I started putting my vision and my vibes out into the world, like people just started coming into my life. You know, they had liked my story, and that's how I came across the opportunity to be the director of the Hail Mary Project. And I wanted to start out by saying, you're worth it. I think that's one thing that we have to realize and really believe for ourselves, is that you're worth it. Like every struggle, every challenge, every adversity, you know, I faced and you faced up to this, you know, present moment, especially with the coronavirus, has really prepared you for this moment. You know, life's a great gift. It's simple, but it's not easy. And I learned that the hard way. So I really didn't know exactly where to start, because I've done so much in my lifetime. So just going off of, you know, what everybody else talked about this far, for me, I had it kind of rough growing up. I can say that my mother, she did everything she could to provide. I got 2 other siblings, so it was 3 of us. I seen my mom get divorced when I was about 8, and I knew that that was a hard time for her, and how hard, as a kid, you kind of really just don't know. And but I seen my mom push through, and she always provided. We always had a, you know, roof over our head. We always had clothes on our back, and we always had food on the table. But for me, that just wasn't good enough. You know, I just wanted the best of the best. I, you know, wanted to fit in and kind of be like everybody else. So I struggled with identity early on. I also, you know, struggled with authority. And that had got me into a lot of stuff that I didn't want to be into. And because I was so ambitious, or I was adventurous, I just found myself doing things that either most kids wouldn't do, or I stayed getting into stuff that I didn't have no business getting into. For instance, it was something about fire that I really liked as a kid. I don't know if it was the light, I don't know if it was the thrill, because I knew I shouldn't do it. So the fact that I knew I shouldn't, but it was a chance that I could get caught, maybe it was the adrenaline, or maybe it was the excitement. But I remember one 4th of July, I was 10 years old, and my mom said that she had to go to the grocery store. And me, loving fire and having these sparklers, she knew that, it was a good chance that's what I was going to be doing. So she's like, Preston, don't play with these sparklers until I get back. And she had good reason for saying this, because I burnt stuff down and lit stuff on fire on accident. So she leaves, she goes to the store, and of course, my friend, she comes down, and all my friends come down. So I don't know how many of us, but as soon as she gets out of sight, we fire up the sparklers, we running in the yard, we running on the porch, we running in the house. And some time had passed, and then the next thing you know, I'm on the porch, I'm lighting the sparkler, and somebody says, "Ooh, Preston, your mom's here." And I'm like, oh crap, I can't run outside the front door. So I stomp it out. And if you can't stomp out sparklers. They don't go out until they burn out. And she had got this couch from my grandma that we had on the front porch. And it was the old couch, the kind that got the stuff hanging off the bottom of it, one of them old furnitures from back in the day. So I stomp out the sparkler, and I put it underneath the couch, and I come outside, oh, innocent, flash this smile. Hey, mom, and she like, y'all come help me get the groceries. So my, brother come, and she's getting the groceries, and I'm talking to my friends, and I just see my mom, she's walking up to the door with these groceries, and I see this horrified look on her face. And I turn around because I wanted to know what she was looking at. And I turned around, and the house was on fire. Like, the porch was on fire from this sparkler. This is my mother's first house. When I say my mother worked so hard to, finally like buy her first house, being divorced, raising 3 kids by herself. And, that was one of her dreams. And there it went, up in flames. That was probably one of the only things that I probably didn't get a whooping for, because she said if she would have put her hands on me, she probably would have killed me. And she had good reason to. So I was one of those kids. And, I was just influenced by the hip hop culture. I was influenced by things that were risky. I didn't like authority. So I found myself hanging out with the misfits, hanging out with the troublemakers. So as a kid, I was abused. Like, my family is from Mississippi. My mother was raised first generation Iowan. And it was just some things about being raised in the South, especially within the Black community, that today, like, you would literally go to jail for. So the whoopings that I got, I know now, was abuse. And because I was the pyromaniac, I was the thief, I was the troublemaker, I was the defiant one, I just found myself always on the other end of something, whether if it be a belt, a switch, an extension cord, a telephone cord, you name it. There wasn't a whole lot that didn't touch this backside of mine. And what had happened was, I just kind of went within myself, and I got so angry to the point to where I could literally get beat and not cry. And at some point, I just realized that I didn't want to accept this no more. So as 11, 12-year-old, I started running away from home. And for you mothers out there, you can imagine what that is like, to have your child gone for days and you don't know where they're at. And from there came the stealing, and gangs and drugs were around. Like, I didn't have to watch TV. I could go to my aunt's house, or I could go to my friend's house, and I can see everything plain in sight. And for me, I didn't know what was reality, because the stuff they talked about in the music and the stuff you see on TV, I kind of seen firsthand. So I just thought this was real. I thought this was life. I thought this is what you do. and, you know, trying to fit in and be cool. You know, at a young age, I got introduced to drugs, and outside of using, I realized we was poor. My mom did a great job at providing, but I realized we was poor. And as I wanted the Nikes and the other things that the other kids had, and my mother couldn't afford them for me, once I seen that I could sell drugs or steal to get the money to be able to buy the things that I wanted, that's what I started doing. And um, that led me to getting incarcerated my first time, my 6th grade year. And from there, you know, it just kept going. I probably went to every residential facility in the state of Iowa at some point. I think about 3 of them. And then as a 17-year-old, um, I did go to college. As a 16-year-old, I figured high school wasn't for me, and I dropped out and I got my GED. And I was at the state training school in Eldora for boys until I was 18. I did a shootout, a drive-by shootout in broad daylight with some other kids from a rival gang because I thought it was cool. And I ended up getting arrested. So they sentenced me to the state training school in Eldora my freshman year until I was 18. And I was always a figure it out type guy, you know, like, well, what can I do to get out sooner? So they said, you know, well, if you can get your GED and find a college that has dorms, we'll let you out. And that's what I did. And shortly after, you know, I was released from Eldora. It wasn't long before I was hanging out with the same crowd, doing the same things. You know, I was going to college, and that made my mom proud. But, you know, I didn't change. I was just looking for a way out. And, you know, I hear people say they want to do different things. They want to move. There's no opportunity, but they're not doing anything themselves to change. So, you know, when Danielle said you have to put your own mask on, like putting your own mask on is being real with yourself and saying, hey, there's some places I want to go. There's some things I want to do. So I have to put my hand to the plow and start taking responsibility for the choices, the actions, and the decisions that I make. I had to stop blaming everybody else for where I was in life and why I wasn't doing the things that I wanted to do. And I had to start taking responsibility. So that had got kind of planted in me early, but it took a decade before it even played out. So as a 17-year-old, I'm selling drugs. I'm talking about I got more money than I know what to do with, and I didn't restrict myself from anything. There wasn't nothing that I couldn't buy that I didn't have as a 17-year-old. And how that ended is I got arrested as a 17-year-old, and I was sentenced to 20 years in prison for drugs, in which I served 4. I served 4 years. I went in when I was 17. I served 4 years, which was a really hard time because I didn't know what to expect. But at the same time, it was part of the culture, it was part of the lifestyle. And in the streets, I got credit. You know, in prison, I had got credit. And I think that kind of filled me and gave me this false sense of hope and this false sense of self-worth. But something that I noticed along that whole journey as I realized like I need to detour and I need something to distract me from the current story I believed about myself, because that's what it was. I had this false narrative and this false story about what I believe for myself. And I think we all come to that point to where, you know, we believe these lies to be truths and we live out of these lies, and out of these lies is where we get these insecurities and where we get this false sense of self, which adds to our fear. And you know, I feel like it's at them times where our failures is magnified, and you know, we can feel stuck, or you know, we just get to that point to where we become content and we don't know how to make that leap. Somebody say, well, how do I know when to leap? You know when to leap when you tired of being where you at, when you sick and tired of being sick and tired, when the rubber meets the road, or when you stuck between a rock and a hard place, like the country or the world is in right now, it's just something that that happens. It's in you. It's instinct because we survivors, and that's just how I feel like God has bred us. So it was at the point in my time where I really decided to change. I was actually on my second bid in prison for selling drugs, and my daughter, she was 2 months old when I had got arrested. And I mean, I was devastated. Me and her mom wasn't in a great situation. So what happened was I was on the verge of committing suicide, and I actually tried, and I failed. So I had told the guards what was going on, and they come and they get you. They still put you in handcuffs. They kind of wrap you up, and they put you in what they call the safe cell. And in this room, I just remember really crying out to God for my soul, because I thought that I wasn't going to be able to make it out. And it was in that moment that I really felt like God heard my cry, and he gave me a newness of life, and he gave me that love. And I felt like he kind of like everything was different after that point. And I remember just saying that I'd be damned if I let another man raise my child. So it was from that point, after I got released, it was a journey, and it was hard, and none of it was easy. But I just told myself, like, I'll do anything to be able to have that freedom. So I feel like what we and now you feel like your freedom has been taken, but I've lived, I've served 13 years, and my thing with the serving time that I realize is different than the world is the fact that people just go. Like, you got to take time for yourself. You got to take time to stop and think. You got to, focus on you, because if you're not in the equation, then nothing else really matters. And it's not in a selfish way, but we so bombarded by kids, jobs, work, stress, life, cooking, cleaning. It's so much. And my question is, how much time do you spend with yourself daily? Like, how much time do you set aside to, like, pamper you, to take care of you, to focus on your well-being? Because without you, then what about your kids? Or like, we all play into it. And I just think we should optimize all our time. And I know I'm going on time, so I got some points. Like right now we go through these heart attacks. Like, when life happens, when these hurdles, these challenges, these obstacles, it gives us a heart attack, not a physical, but an emotional heart attack. So when these things happen, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, because they happen to everybody at some point in their life. They come to this fork in the road, and they get this heart attack, and because it grips your heart. So my message is, whatever you lost, you'll get back, as long as you don't lose heart. Don't lose your fight. Don't lose your focus. Don't lose your resilience. Don't lose your buoyancy, and don't lose your ability to fight back. It's when we lose heart that our failures become fatal. And I feel like this is really a good opportunity. So if you used to giving yourself and giving yourself and giving yourself, like, this is the time to fill your cup back up. Because one of my other sayings, outside of, if you want something you've never had, you got to do something you've never done, which is, pretty much what I did. You can't pour from an empty cup. So if you constantly pouring and giving up yourself, who's going to fill you up? Or when you don't have nothing left to pour, then what do? You cannot pour from an empty cup. So I feel like this is a good opportunity for people to take a personal inventory of themselves, figure out exactly where we at in life and what we need, and fill our cups back up so we can go out there and be the best version of ourselves. I know I went over, but that's
you
yeah.
know, I'm gonna have to, but I think people could listen to you all day. That was just great. Thank you so much for being so vulnerable and for sharing that. I know when I was in my dark days and kind of going through a rough spat, that last piece of advice is, you know, you can't love others or fill others up when your cup is empty. And so Preston gave me a lot of good advice along the way. So thank you so much for
You're
sharing.
welcome.